All right, we should be recording. Hope you guys are having a great day so far. So I feel like I'm a little rusty with jumping on here and recording for you guys. It's been a couple of weeks probably since I've gone live in here, recording anything. Just been super busy with obviously the Mother's Day giveaway, the big scholarship we did this year, which is the first one we've done in probably over a year, I think. And probably will be the last one we do for at least another year, I would assume. So just super, super excited how that's went. You know, so many incredible women getting started in their journeys, working with Katie or I. And if you haven't heard from us yet, we literally still are going through some applications, and some people who kind of got a spot maybe aren't necessarily taking it. So there might be a spot potentially opening up for you. So just kind of be on the lookout for that if you do, get a text from me. But I want to come on here and talk about protein and some of the biggest mistakes that I see people making when it comes to their protein intake. And super pumped side note about how the podcast studio is kind of looking right now. Got a new desk, new standing desk. My other one was a standing one, but my other one, it had this like annoying crank that I had to crank up and down to lower and raise it. And it just took forever. And then also for me just moving around the desk so much, something got like disconnected in it, and it was like going upwards uneven. So like half the desk was like slanted down. So I couldn't really use that anymore. And I wanted to be able to like put my walking pad under my desk and get some steps in while doing client check-ins. And so I got a new desk, this brown one too, which I actually really like how it looks. And it is a standing one, but it's electric. So I just press a little button and it just slowly goes up, and there's like different levels you can set it at too. And then I can like set it at the highest level at 4 for it to be as high as I need it to like walk. And I can like leave and it just raises up on its own. So it just is like, I love it. It's thick too. And it's pretty, in my opinion, nice quality. I mean, maybe my standards aren't as high as some other people, but I think it's great. Liking the way the camera's set up, the lights, all this stuff. So got some other stuff too for the studio that hasn't come in yet. Like a little shelf in the background. I actually got a fake plant too, so I can look like a legit podcast studio maybe. We'll see. I'm an amateur at this kind of stuff, but it's been kind of cool. But hopefully you guys are liking the setup, if you're watching this on video. But let's go ahead and just dive into like today's topic with the protein mistakes. So I listed out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 big mistakes people make when trying to hit their protein intake for, fat loss or changing their body composition. Because if you are somebody who you want to lose weight, want to lose body fat, I'm sure at some point, from your own research or just scrolling online, swiping through TikTok, you have found somebody talking about how important protein is for fat loss or weight management, weight regulation. So let's dive in. And this isn't going to be a podcast about like the science behind protein. Maybe, if you guys want something like that, I can record something like that at some point. This is just going to be about some of the biggest mistakes I see people make when it comes to setting a protein goal and trying to hit that protein goal. So mistake number 1, and this is probably the glaring one, is that a lot of people are not eating enough protein. Like if you haven't tried to calculate how much protein you need, if you haven't tried to track your intake at all up to this point, there's a good chance you are not eating enough protein, or you're eating enough to survive, but you're probably not eating enough to really get your body composition to change that you want when it comes to building muscle, losing body fat, maintaining muscle mass, and also staying full and satisfied too. Protein is very satiating, meaning it helps us to stay full. So it's really important to make sure, we're getting enough protein to stay full between meals. It digests slower than things like carbs or fats. So helps us to, stay full a little bit longer. So most people are not eating enough protein. Like I've coached so many people, so many women especially, who very first week, we just have you just track your usual food intake. And very rarely do I have people who are eating enough protein. Sometimes it happens, and it's usually the people who like they've been trying things on their own and actually have tried tracking their food intake before, and they're not seeing progress because their calories aren't in the right spot, or their training program isn't great, or vice versa, or for whatever reason. But most people are under eating protein. Like if you have never calculated your protein intake before, have never tried tracking it, it's a good chance, you might be eating 60, 70 grams of protein per day, which is, like I said, enough to survive, but it's likely not enough to actually see the body composition changes that you're probably wanting, looking for, and want to aim for. So mistake number one is just you're not eating enough. And it's really easy to fall into this because like we live in a society where we're always so busy. We're always trying to grab the most convenient thing. And the most convenient things, unless you're going out of your way and buying protein bars or protein shakes, it's usually not protein isn't like the first thing that you think of. Like crackers, different snack foods, things that people have in the office, just sitting out. A lot of those things happen to be higher in carbs and fats. So protein is just a little bit harder to find. You have to be a little bit more intentional about looking for that kind of stuff. Because carbs and fats are kind of everywhere and kind of really easy to find, in the stores, laying around, at gas stations, things like that. And protein's not impossible to find at these places. You just got to look a little bit deeper. It's like if you go outside and you're looking at birds, and this has popped in my head because my son, he's always looking outside, out the window, looking at birds, and he'll see a bird and he'll be like, bird, and it's just funny. But you guys don't care about that probably. But when you look outside, you see all these birds, and it's very common to see a robin, right? But to see like a cardinal or a blue jay or some other kind of, interesting bird, you got to look a little bit for it. And the same thing with protein. Like when you're looking at food, carbs and fats are really everywhere. Protein, you got to be a little bit more intentional about. So most people, if you're not tracking your food, have never done it before, probably not just naturally eating enough protein compared to what you need. We went to Punta Cana like a month ago, and when we went to Disney, like vacations, you're probably gonna struggle to hit your actual protein requirement there that you need for like optimal body composition change too, because when they bring out your portion size for your dinners, like they're probably bringing out a portion size that doesn't, like if you ate that meal 3 times a day, probably doesn't add up to like the amount of protein you could benefit from for your body composition. So not eating enough, obviously big glaring mistake, easy one out of the way. If you're listening to this, you probably have thought, okay, I'm probably not eating enough protein. Now, mistake number 2, which is kind of on the flip side of the coin, which is you're eating too much protein, or at least you're trying to eat too much protein, which is actually an issue I've seen more often lately, potentially in some people, is just because of all of these messages of the importance of protein, right? Everyone's like, okay, like how much protein do I need? I need to include more protein. And there's influencers, fitness people, coaches out there who are putting out this recommendation of you need 0.8 to 1.0 grams per pound of body weight. And probably the most common thing you hear is 1 gram per pound of body weight, which isn't always wrong, that 1 gram per pound of body weight. And this is something that I probably had said, years in the past too. But there's a caveat to this, which is this only really applies to you, this number, 1 gram per pound of body weight, if you are at a relatively healthy-ish body weight and you're not that overweight. If you are a little bit in the overweight category in the BMI scale, and like the BMI scale, I'm not saying that automatically determines if you're healthy or not. It's just a screening tool used, in medical practice to see, okay, this person's BMI is high, maybe let's look at their lifestyle more. And that's how it should be used. But if you are a little bit on the overweight side on the BMI scale, like in that category, you probably are okay with using that 1 gram per pound of body weight recommendation, maybe 0.8 to 1.0 grams per pound of body weight. Like that's pretty good starting place for you, like to get your protein intake or to see, how much protein you need. But once you get into the high overweight category, or you get into the obese category, and especially far into the obese category, following that 1 gram per pound of body weight recommendation is likely just way too much for you. And you probably don't need nearly that much, because protein is based off of, like, your protein requirements are based off of, one, how much resistance training you're doing or lifting weights. Like if you're somebody who you are just doing cardio because you're, let's say, a marathon runner and you don't lift weights very much, you probably don't need as much protein as somebody who is lifting weights, who's a bodybuilder, who's lifting weights maybe 5 times a week and they're not doing any cardio. Like lifting weights, trying to put on more muscle and really maximize that just requires more protein than somebody who is just focused on, okay, I need enough protein to recover for my performance with my endurance running, but I don't need to pack on a bunch of extra pounds of muscle. So one thing that will determine your protein requirement is how much you're lifting weights. Second thing is how much muscle mass or lean body mass you have on your frame right now. And most of the actual recommendations and research when it comes to protein intake for like body composition that a lot of these fitness influencers and coaches are kind of grabbing at and referring to, they are specifically saying, okay, maybe 1 gram per pound of body weight in lean body mass, not full body weight, but in lean body mass, which is basically the body mass on your frame other than fat mass. So take away all the body fat off of your skeleton that you have on your body. How much lean body mass, which actually encompasses things like bones, muscle mass, water weight that you have, organ mass, and things like that, not just muscle, but how many pounds of lean body mass do you have on your frame? Having 1 gram per pound of that equal to that number is probably like what you need to maximize muscle recovery and muscle growth for like fat loss, or if you're someone who's lifting weights. But if you are, like I said, in the very obese category and maybe you have 50 pounds, 100 pounds to lose, you are carrying an extra 50 or 100 pounds of body fat that if you just take the blanket recommendation of 1 gram per pound of body weight, not lean body mass, but body weight, you're basically going to come up with a number where you're thinking to yourself, like, I need to eat 50 to 100 grams more protein than what I actually need. You know, like so a woman who's 250 pounds, who's wanting to lose 50 to 100 pounds, they don't need to eat 250 grams of protein. Like that would be so silly. I myself, I weigh about 195 pounds. I aim for about 200 grams of protein. So like just over that like 1 gram per pound of body weight number. But I don't have like 50 pounds or 100 pounds to really lose. You know, I could, if I wanted to get really lean, could lose another 15 to 20 probably. But I'm just in that like overweight category when it comes to the BMI scale, but I don't have a whole lot of body fat on my frame, like comparison to somebody who has 50 to 100 pounds to lose. So like me, and I also have, I don't know, I don't want to like come off the wrong way saying this, but I probably have a little bit above average level of muscle mass on my frame compared to like the average person. So like I probably require more protein, and I also lift weights 5 times per week. But the 40-year-old mom who's lifting weights 3 times a week and who just wants to lose 50 to 100 pounds to feel better in her own skin, she doesn't need 50 grams more protein than I do. Like that would be ridiculous, right? And it also doesn't make sense too to go off of just body weight for a lot of these calculations when you compare, okay, let's say you have another woman who's 5'5" and she is 150 pounds and she's pretty lean, fit, muscular. She lifts weights 5 times a week. She's, maybe she's a coach herself, right? She's a fitness person, right? She weighs 150 pounds. And if she goes by 1 gram per pound of body weight, she's going to aim for 150 grams of protein, which, is probably a good, level for her. But you take someone else who's 5'5" and she is a 40-year-old mom, lifts weights maybe 3 times a week, like I described, that kind of character, and she's 250 pounds though, and she has 50 to 100 pounds to lose. Why would she need 100 grams more protein than this other person when the 40-year-old mom actually has less muscle mass and actually is lifting weights less? Like this doesn't make any sense. So we have to account for that extra body fat we have if we're going to use some kind of body weight recommendation, which is why, like I said in the research, a lot of these recommendations are actually based off of lean body mass. And the way to calculate that would be to get a rough estimate of your body fat percentage, take away that amount of pounds in body fat, and then find out, what your actual body weight is. So like if you are, let's say 250 pounds, but you are 40% body fat, 40% of 250 is probably, mental math, probably around 110 or 100 or so pounds of body fat. So you take 100 pounds off of that 250, and now you have maybe 150 pounds of lean body mass. And that's a little bit more probably accurate of a calculation of how much protein this woman might want to aim for to maximize recovery and all this stuff. So just using body weight is a bad calculation for protein for a lot of people, especially people who have a good chunk of weight they want to lose. If you have 20 plus pounds that you want to or actually need to lose for health purposes, you probably shouldn't be using just body weight to calculate your protein. So you could either calculate your lean body mass and do it that way, or another way, which I have found has actually been really helpful. And it's a way that I use with actually pretty much all of our clients. And there are some caveats and some nuances with this other way to calculate your protein intake. But I feel it's pretty reliable and pretty consistent, which is, and I've heard other people talk about this too a little bit, is using your height instead of your weight to figure out where your rough protein goal should be. And the reason why this works is because there's a certain amount of realistic muscle mass or lean body mass someone at a given height can have on their frame. Now, there's obviously a range. Some people genetically hold more muscle than others. For sure, some people genetically put on more muscle when they start lifting weights than others. So there's obviously a range. But there is some kind of maximum number for most people, the average person at least, of how much extra poundage or how much extra weight in muscle you can put on at a given height without taking steroids or anything extra like that. So the protein recommendations that I've found to work really well are to, if someone's between 5 foot and 5'3", and this is for women, by the way. Men are a little bit different because they just hold a little bit more lean body mass or muscle mass on their frame genetically. But my audience is mostly women. That's who we coach. So between 5 foot and 5'3", anywhere between 100 and 130 grams of protein is probably where you want to be. If you are between 5'4" and 5'7", probably somewhere between 130 and 150, maybe up to 160 grams of protein is probably where you want to be. If you are 5'8" or above, you probably want to be at 170 to 200 grams of protein, maybe higher. And these are just rough ranges. They're not perfect. There are some clients where they are a little bit taller, but they don't lift weights as much, and they're not too concerned with maximizing their muscle growth. So I have them at a lower range, so it is individual, but those are better ranges, in my opinion, than going off of body weight. And that going off of height helps to put your protein in a range that is actually realistic for what a healthy body weight probably would look like for you, or at least close to it. Another way you could calculate this, and some people have said this, is to use your rough goal body weight and eat 1 gram per pound of protein in that. And I think that's a pretty safe way to go too, as long as your goal body weight is realistic. If your goal body weight is something that's maybe actually too high for you, maybe your protein intake is still going to be a little bit too high. Or maybe if your goal body weight is a little bit low compared to what's realistic, now you're going to undershoot your protein a little bit. But I think that those height categories, and then realizing there's nuance in there of, okay, I'm 5'3", but maybe I do hold more muscle than the average person. Maybe I am going to be on the higher end of 130 instead of as low as 100, making sure that every person is individual. But I think those are better starting points than using 1 gram per pound of body weight in just the environment we're in now, right? With 70% of the US, I believe, is either overweight or obese. You can't really go off of body weight because most people are holding on to extra body fat. If you're really lean, fitness person, you're maybe let's say between 10 and 15% body fat for male. You're between maybe 15 to 25% body fat. I would say actually 20 to 25% body fat for women or a female. Like you probably could use the 1 gram per pound of body weight and it would be fine for you. But if you have more weight to lose, you probably are going to aim for too high of a protein goal if you're going off of that. Next mistake that people make when it comes to protein is not getting enough protein per meal, especially for breakfast. I find a lot of times when clients sign up, breakfast is especially the one meal where their protein intake ends up being like super low, like 10 grams per meal, 15 grams per meal, maybe at the most. And that sets you up to have to cram in so much protein for lunch or cram in so much for dinner. And there are some people who maybe it works for them. Maybe they enjoy eating that way and they don't mind cramming in a bunch of protein for lunch and dinner and having a lower protein breakfast. But for most people, you would benefit greatly from having a really high protein breakfast. We don't want it just protein, like we want it balanced with some fruits and vegetables and some healthy carbs in there too. But really distributing, a lot of your protein in the beginning of the day can be helpful. So if you're someone who's aiming for, let's say, 120 grams of protein, making sure you're probably getting at least 40 grams of protein in that breakfast. That way, if you do evenly split it up, you have 40 for breakfast, 40 for lunch, and 40 for dinner. And I think just trying to get that breakfast at least as close to 40 grams, if not, maybe slightly more as possible, would help so many people with setting themselves up to hit their protein easier the rest of the day. And also to just allow yourself to feel really full and satisfied after that first meal. A lot of people will skip that first meal and then they'll be dealing with cravings and feeling ravenously hungry the whole rest of the day. And a big part of that is like people think they just need to be more disciplined or it's something they have to fix for dinner. But if you start your day off with a really strong breakfast, 40 grams of protein, fruits and vegetables in there, healthy carbs, maybe it's an egg white omelet with some vegetables and some cheese mixed in with some whole grain bread or something like that on the side. That's going to go a long way with you feeling really sharp, having a lot of energy, feeling really full, satisfied the rest of the day, eliminating a ton of these cravings a lot of times we have. So don't neglect breakfast when it comes to protein. And breakfast is one of those meals where for most people, other than just being in a rush because we like maybe wake up too late, we're scrolling too late on our phones, then we don't get as much sleep and this and that. Breakfast is the one meal that a lot of times like you're eating by yourself. Dinner is a little bit harder, especially when you have a family because you're eating it with your spouse, you're eating it with your kids. So you kind of have to make something that they, kind of like to. And maybe breakfast is the same way for you, but for a lot of people, breakfast and lunch, but especially breakfast, is a meal where you're kind of up at your own time. You're starting the day maybe on your own a little bit more, and you can really control what you have for breakfast. And if you really control that and have, the high protein breakfast first thing in the morning, you set yourself up for a lot of success the rest of the day. So don't neglect breakfast. And a lot of people too stress about like, I need more high protein breakfast ideas. And keep in mind this too, there's no rules to like when during the day you eat certain foods. And like just because something's not a stereotypical breakfast food doesn't mean you can't eat it at breakfast time. Like I've eaten lean ground beef burgers before for, I guess you could call it breakfast. Like I don't even know if I necessarily call it breakfast. It's just an early meal for me. But lately I've been waking up at kind of 5:30 a.m. typically, have a quick carb snack right before I work out, get done working out, get my son up around 8:30, 9 o'clock. And then usually at like 9 o'clock, once he's up, he's eating his breakfast and I'm eating my first actual kind of meal. I don't really count that carbohydrate snack before my workout a meal, but I'm eating like my first meal. And that's usually like leftovers of whatever like I kind of prepped beforehand for lunches, quote unquote, or for a meal. So the past couple of days, I made a bunch of extra burgers when we cooked burgers for dinner one night. That way I could just heat them up for my lunches or, during the day when I wanted to eat them. And I was having burgers at like 9:30 a.m. And like, that's okay. There's no rules of you have to eat stereotypical breakfast foods early in the morning. And like, you can't eat, a burger first thing in the morning if that helps you to hit your protein intake and keeps your protein high and all that stuff. Same thing goes for, you can have breakfast type foods in for dinner too. There were a couple of nights ago we had protein pancakes for dinner. So anything can be eaten at any time of the day. Next mistake people make is not bulk prepping protein. So if you are always struggling to get your protein intake in, but you are not cooking your main protein sources in bulk for the week at least, you're setting yourself up for failure. I'm not a big like meal prep type person. I know you see sometimes like these people on TikTok or social media who have all these Tupperware containers, like 8 different containers, and they cook, one meal, chicken, rice, broccoli, whatever, and put it in these containers for the week. I'm not a big person like that. But prepping at least and cooking in bulk your protein sources is really, really helpful, because then you can just grab your protein source, heat it up, and package it however you want in a meal to maybe spice up variety, or even, to just make it, super quick, not putting the broccoli and rice and chicken all in the same containers over and over, so you're not forced to eat the same exact thing every meal. It is really helpful. Like I just kind of described, we had lean ground beef burgers a couple of nights ago for dinner, and instead of making 4 burgers, 1 for my son, 1 for my wife, and 2 for me, because I typically eat 2, I made, I don't know, probably like 9 or 10 burgers. So now I had 6 extra that are going to be able to be filled in for like my lunches or my quote unquote breakfast, or if maybe we don't feel like cooking one random night for dinner, I can just heat that up and have leftovers there. But now I have 6 extra burgers to have throughout the rest of the week whenever I want them. And it makes hitting my protein goal so much easier, because now when I'm in a rush, I can just put it in the microwave, slap it on, whole grain bun, or however when I eat it. Maybe I don't even want to put it on a bun. I just want to cut it up and eat it and have something else on the side. Like I can put together these mix and match meals by just adding some kind of fruit or vegetable to it and adding some kind of carbohydrate to it, and put a meal together there. And it doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be something you would see on a recipe page. It just has to have your protein, fruit or vegetable, and your healthy carb all like put together. Probably going to make some kind of steaks tonight. We have some sirloin steaks I bought, and I'm going to have one. My wife will probably have one. My son will have a little bit, but I think we have maybe 8 total steaks in there right now. I'm probably going to cook 5 extra. That way I have, 4 or 5 extra steaks for the next, 4 or 5 days. So whenever you cook a meal and cook a dinner and it has some kind of protein source like that to it, cook extra. That way you can heat that up and put it in, package it however you want the remaining days. Like there have been times I've made a bunch of chicken in bulk, and like the one day I'll heat it up and have some for a chicken sandwich. The next day I'll heat it up and add it to some pasta for some chicken Alfredo. The next night maybe I'll heat it up and add it to some romaine lettuce with some Caesar dressing and have a chicken Caesar salad. Like now I have these protein things already like bulk prepped, so I can heat them up whenever I need to hit my protein intake, along with having other options that don't require cooking or even heating up at all, like low-fat Greek yogurt, protein shakes. I always have my Ninja Creamy high-protein ice cream in the freezer, like already prepped. So if I really need some high protein, I could just mix up one of those. But having those that don't require any cooking, and then when you do end up cooking bulk extra, that way it saves you cooking time, the next few days, and you have that ready to go. And it's easy to just put together like miscellaneous items almost in your kitchen to have a balanced meal then. And then last mistake that people make is trying to look for different protein sources when you keep falling short on your protein, instead of just eating more of the ones you have. So I've run into this before, where a lot of times clients will ask, oh, like what are some more like high protein foods? I'm constantly low on my protein, and I look and they're having like egg whites and eggs maybe for breakfast, they're having some chicken for lunch, and they're having some ground beef for dinner, and maybe even they're having a snack of like low fat Greek yogurt at some point, and they're like, okay, what are some other high protein foods? And I'm like, well, you have 4 in your day already, and you're 15 grams short in protein or 20 grams short in protein. What if instead of trying to find like another protein source, the protein sources that we already eat, we just ate a little bit more. So instead of having 4 ounces of beef, we have 5. Instead of 5 ounces of chicken, we have 6. Instead of 200 grams of Greek yogurt, we're having 300 grams. you can simply just increase the portion size of the protein source you're eating and get more protein instead of having to think of all of these other items necessarily. They are out there, but now you're trying to like shop for like 7 different protein sources, 8 different protein sources, and where it's just so much more simple to just increase the portion size of what you're already eating, which kind of goes to my next point. The serving sizes of food labels are not what's necessarily healthy for you. They are just basically a number. So the food labeling company can put, okay, how many calories are in this, right? If there's no like actual serving size, quote unquote, they don't know what number to put there. I think it might be based off of what the average person maybe eats, but it doesn't mean that you have to eat that much. Like a serving size, quote unquote, of chicken breast is 4 ounces on the package. But there have been times where I've eaten 12 ounces of chicken in one sitting, and mixed that up in like a salad or noodles, however I wanted it, put it on sandwiches, and got like 75 grams of protein in one meal just from having 12 ounces of it. There have been times where I've had 10 ounces of lean ground beef burgers. Like I said before, I have 2 burgers usually when I have them, and a lot of times I'll patty them up in 5-ounce burgers. So I'm having 10 ounces at a time, even though the serving size on the package is 4 ounces. So the serving sizes on the package are not recommendations for you specifically. They are basically just random numbers where they need to put them on there. So, they know how many calories they can put on there, right? Because if there's no designation of what a serving size is, they can't really put like a calorie number because like there's no number to reference there. Like I said, sure, maybe it's based off of what the average person maybe ate in the past of, that type of meal, but it doesn't mean that that's what you need to eat. So don't like feel so constrained of 4 ounces of chicken as a serving size. I can't eat more than 4 ounces of chicken at a meal. Like you can have 6, you can have 8, and that will make your life so much easier of being able to have high protein meals and hit your protein intake more. So that is it for today's episode. Got a call with a one-on-one client here pretty soon. Excited to talk with her. So that is it, and I will see you guys in the next one.